The TVR Tuscan Challenge, the feature race at a damp Rockingham Oval in Corby, and the TVR Tuscans led away by Steve Guglielmi, the fastest man in practice by 65/100ths of a second, and the winner of the qualifying race. Alongside him, Richard Finney, third on the grid, newcomer Jay Shepherd in his black car, and in fourth spot after a fantastic battle in the closing stages, John Hartshorn lines up ahead of Andy Britnell fifth, and Andrew Delahunty will be right behind him in sixth position. So, wet conditions, much wetter than for race one. 450 horsepower of lively TVR muscle will be tough to handle around here. Can anybody take a victory away from poleman Guglielmi? Well, they're ready to go. The revs rise, and a good start from Richard Finney. Gets hooked up nicely, gets past Steve Guglielmi right from the word go. Andy Britnell from row 3 of the grid now up into third place. Very good start from Andy Britnell. And the rest of them hopefully will file safely through the flat out first corner, but it's under braking here for the double left-hander that it could all go wrong. Well, the poleman safely through this time, so too Troy Dunlop from the outside, but around goes the number 12 car of TVR engineer John Reed, and the safety car will be the only one behind him after that. Richard Finney slides in the lead as he exits the second corner, so behind him does Steve Guglielmi. Andy Britnell looking strong, Jay Shepherd in fourth, and problems further back, and that is Andrew Delahunty, who started in sixth place. Somebody's caught him in the rear and spun him round in the middle of the pack. Look how much these cars are sliding through that tight infield chicane, really struggling for grip. Ride with Troy Dunlop, John Hartshorn right in front of us, and with the tricky conditions, some of the drivers opting for slicks, many of them going for full wet weather tyres in the hope that it will stay wet. And I think Andrew Delahunty, one of those who's gone for the slick tyre option, the dry tyres, and that looks like it was poor choice from the man who was sixth on the grid. Well, again, Hartshorn, the red car with a white stripe, with Troy Dunlop, the rhubarb and custard coloured car right behind him. And Troy Dunlop, nice tight line out there. He's got plenty of grip in the corner at slow speed, so presumably with the wet weather tyres on. And 67 car Jay Shepherd there, fourth in race one. Made a good start, but holds on to fourth place away from the grid. So Richard Finney leads. Second place, Steve Guglielmi. Third, Andy Britnell. Fourth, Jay Shepherd. Fifth, Gary Britnell. Sixth, Troy Dunlop. Then the red car, John Hartshorn in seventh. And in eighth place, the number 9 car of Gareth Evans. And then behind him, his teammate, Darren Dowling, was in 10th place. So Troy Dunlop trying to stay in contact with the lead group, because he needs to try and limit the damage with Steve Guglielmi, the points leader, ahead of him. Dunlop with a major accident earlier in the season at Donington Park. He failed to score there, and he's had a couple of other non-finishes. And a big slide there from Richard Finney allows Steve Guglielmi to come up level with him down the inside. And Guglielmi, once in the lead, is often a hard man to repass. Not that he fights dirty, far from it. It's just that his speed in these TVRs is such that few drivers normally get the chance to fight back at him. Well, Richard Finney, with plenty of experience, missed last year's season due to lack of funds, but has come back in a car sponsored by Findus, the frozen food company that is the title sponsor of the championship. They wanted a car out there running in their colours, and Finney, an ideal man for the job. Riding with Troy Dunlop. See how slippery it still is, being very tentative with the throttle through the muddy section there. Steve Cole ahead of Peter Wheeler. And that's David Porter in the yellow and red car, trying to make a move on Hugh Marshall. Didn't have enough room to do it there. Giles Cooper and Ben Samuelson behind them. Steve Guglielmi leading from Richard Finney. And then Andy Britnell and Jay Shepherd. Gary Britnell here with Troy Dunlop down the inside. We were following Gary there a moment or two ago as we were on board with Troy Dunlop. He gets the move nicely made, and despite the slippery surface, manages to go through on the inside line. Now the question for those with wet weather tyres is, how dry will it get? It's already starting to dry up, and you can see there Rod Barrett being passed by John Reed in the Works TVR car number 12. On board with John Reed, this is down to the first corner. The They're turning down off the banking here and through the chicane. And John just coming in too slow. You could hear the engine note die as he got onto the brakes nice and hard. But coming in too late and just couldn't hold it together under braking. The other works car for the chairman, Peter Wheeler. He's the boss of the TVR company. And second and third place very close together now, as into the pits comes Nigel Tuscan in car number 11. Not quite sure what his problem is, but clearly it's not just the weather. Guglielmi, Finney in second place here, and Andy Britnell behind him. And still the cars sliding around on the slick surface as they have the power unleashed by the drivers, feeding it in as gently as they can. If you just stamp on the throttle with the horsepower the TVR's AJP V8 engine has, it will certainly spin. John Reed down the inside of Giles Cooper there, recovering from that mistake we saw earlier, Reed, and passes Cooper nicely down the inside. The double left-handers that come off the banking. A little late and a little wide into the next corner. Giles Cooper has a chance to fight back as Andy Britnell comes down the inside of Richard Finney on the dry line. Finney on the wet line, brakes, but the car slides out wide. He tries to come back on the inside, but can't find the traction there because, again, he was on the wet line. Troy Dunlop also running a little late in there and loses his place to Darren Dowling. And you could hear as Troy Dunlop opened the throttle, the wheels just spinning up there as he was on the water. Darren Dowling goes by, and Dunlop struggling for grip here. Well, Darren Dowling started well down the order, and judging by the way he's caught past and driven away from Troy Dunlop, I'd have to suggest that he may well be on slick tyres as the track is drying out. He's finding more grip than the wet shod cars. Hugh Marshall in the number 2 machine, all on his own, having a little bit of a lonely time of it. Behind him, teammate Gareth Evans with Ben Samuelson, TVR's press and PR man, and then behind Ben is the boss. Peter Wheeler's not going to do anything so high-handed as to flash the lights and demand that Ben gets out of the way. All he'll ask is that the two factory cars aren't badly damaged in an incident between the two of them. Gareth Evans holding on here in front of Samuelson's repaired car. He got caught up in a big kerfuffle on lap 1 of the first race, and so Ben started from the back of the grid. Well, here is Andy Britnell in dominant form at Alton Park 2 races ago. Took his first ever pole position and then won the sprint race and the feature race as well. So the qualifier and the main event both went to him, as well as pole position. And he has really used that confidence boost to keep him continually at the front of the grid ever since. Troy Dunlop on board, chasing down the white car in front of him. And as they come off the banking, onto the slippery infield section, ride with Dunlop and see the way that the track rises and falls. Again over the brow, down into this right-hander, and then feeding in the power, short little straight into the tricky left-hander, and then over the curbs here again through that infield chicane. And it dives and rises. Oh, and Darren Dowling sliding a little more. Over on the curbs there, Troy Dunlop coming back towards him now. It's a very hard job to guess which way a track is going to go when it's drizzling before you go out onto it. It was certainly wet enough at the start to demand wet weather tyres. The question is, will it stay wet enough? Nobody's really got that experience of Rockingham because this is the first major motor race here. As you can see from around the sides of the track, it's all still bare earth where the earthworks have only just been completed. So nobody really has any idea how it will react to changing weather, how quickly it'll dry or how long it'll stay wet. And as you can see, there's parts of it that are still very damp, but there is a lot of dry racing line about. And here you can see absolutely bone dry on the racing line. And that means really that slicks are probably the thing to have, even though Darren Dowling sliding up there onto the banking is sliding wide up towards the worryingly big concrete wall. Still, for a lot of the track, slick tyres are the thing. Feathering the throttle here through turn 4. and then building up the speed again once they've safely negotiated it. The single digit from the man in the starter's tower. 1 lap to go. Darren Dowling holding off Troy Dunlop for 5th place, but I wonder for how long. Looks like Dowling may not have much of an answer here on this wet road. Oh, and Dunlop down the inside, misjudges his braking completely. Contact between the two of them, slapped Darren Dowling in the side. Dowling forced to straighten up and run on ahead as Troy Dunlop just negotiated the corner. There goes Darren Dowling behind him now. And, well, that was certainly far from being a cynical punting off manoeuvre. I think on the wet track they were both just racing and leaving their braking to the absolute last moment. And Troy Dunlop, not the sort of driver who will punt somebody off intentionally like that. And just unfortunate misjudgment by a fraction of the conditions. The two of them racing as hard as they can. Steve Guglielmi halfway round the final lap, motoring on his way to victory. But let's have a look again at this battle for 5th. Well, Troy Dunlop gets all locked up, so too, in fairness, locked up beside him is Darren Dowling, but the difference is that Dowling is turning and Troy Dunlop can't get the front wheels to turn because he's still locked up on the brakes. Checkered flag awaits then. Steve Guglielmi, the pole man, the winner of the qualifier, winner of the feature as well. Jubilation at a very successful Rockingham weekend for him. So Guglielmi, front and centre on the podium, victorious at Rockingham. And here's how the rest of them finished. Britnell, Finney, Shepherd, Dunlop and Dowling in that change for 5th and 6th places. And in the championship, it's still Guglielmi leading.